Baby, it's cold outside, and today we talk about how the cold affects your car, your comfort, and your safety. We also talk about what's new here at the track, Lincoln Navigator and Ford Expedition, as well as take viewer questions on cruise control and tires. Next on Talking Cars. Just give us a minute to take off some extra layers here. Welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Jake Fisher.
And I'm Mike Quincy.
So chances are, if you live anywhere in the United States, other than the very, very southern tip of Florida or the very, very southern tip of California, you're probably freezing your butts off right about now, as are we. So we thought it was timely to talk about tips and focus on how the cold weather affects your car, your comfort, your safety. So as the temperatures drop, there's so much misinformation and what do you do? And a lot of these people are experiencing cold that have never experienced it before or don't get it very often. What are some of the things and tips about, how to handle your car in cold weather?
Well, some people say that they want to go out and they warm up their car. And we've seen the last 10 or 15 years a preponderance of people buying remote starters. So they want to go from their warm house to their warm car. But generally speaking, and I think we've published stories on this, is your car gets warmer as it's being driven. For me, what I try to do is when my car is covered with snow, I go out and I get it running, turn on the seat heaters, turn on the defrosters, and then make sure I scrape the windshields so you get improved visibility. So that's generally what I do.
Right, and I think that's huge. Even if there's no snow, when it's very cold, you will get a frosted windshield, and you do need to warm up and run the defrost, not just to give you a little window, but to clear visibility both front and rear. So I think that's important.
But I mean, a lot of people ask, should you warm up your car before you drive it?
Right.
Is it safe? And
or does it do anything for fuel economy? Is a warm engine better than a cold one?
Right. So I mean, the thing is that if you take your car and you just turn it and let it idle, right? I mean, look, I'm not going to say click it over and floor it. You don't want to do that.
Full boost when it's cold.
Full boost when it's cold. But you can get driving your car pretty quick. I mean, look, there's not a lot of engine. You're not pushing the engine really hard especially if it's a slick roads or whatnot.
Right.
But the thing is that you're not going to warm up your car very quickly if you just let it sit there. The other day, I had the remote starter. We had the Honda Odyssey minivan that was parked outside, and I clicked the remote starter, and the thing runs for 5 minutes and shuts off. I got in the car, the thing's still ice cold.
Right.
It was 8 degrees. It
do
didn't
anything.
warm up. It's
Right.
not warming up. As soon as you get in the car and start moving, now
really quick.
you're working the engine, and it's kind of like I went running last weekend out, and it was 8 degrees. I'm running, and I'm wearing
insane. I'm telling you, he's
but
insane.
but everyone thinks I'm nuts. But I'm wearing this thin jacket. I'm wearing just thin gloves, and it's 8, and I was fine. You know why? Because I'm running up and down trails.
Right, your body.
Now, if I wore that and I just stood there, I'm not going to warm up. It's you should warm up before you run. You're not going to warm up if you're just standing there, and that's the same thing with the car. So get it moving. You're going to get the heat a lot quicker.
Now, I'll add to this too. You recently worked on a piece that we did some online about maximizing the comfort and the efficiency of your heating system. What were some of those tips in there? Because I think they'll surprise some people.
Sure. There's a couple of things that you should know about. I mean, one is recirc mode. Bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people are really confused about what do you use the recirc, you got the little car and you got the arrow going around. And if you put in recirc mode, you don't get the outside air. Now, on the one hand, it'll stay warm in the car, which is closing your windows and whatnot, and it'll heat up quicker. The problem is that your windows are going to fog up because you're exhaling water vapor, and that's going to stick to all your windows. And if you couple people in the car and you have the thing on recirc, you're not going to be able to see out. So keep it on outside air in the cold weather. That's really important.
And keep the AC mode on. That was another tip that was in there.
If you're down below 32 degrees, it doesn't really matter.
Which we are.
But if you're at 40, put the AC. Make sure the AC is on, because what that's doing is dehumidifying the air, getting all that moisture out. Again, keeping your windshield clear. But it really does make a big difference in doing that. And it doesn't use much gasoline at all.
And when I was a kid, we used to get in the car. It would be freezing cold. We'd say, Dad, turn on the heat, turn on the heat. And he'd say, if I can, but it's just going to blow out cold air. And that's still the case.
Well, this is especially the case with a lot of the automatic climate control.
Right.
So if you have automatic climate control, a lot of people are like, why it's not putting, well, it's waiting for it to warm up before it starts blowing air at you. Now, you can go manually and take an automatic climate control and like move it to high or 90 or whatever it is. And all it's going to do is go blow cold air on you. It's not going to heat you up any better. But it works like a thermostat. So leave it at 72. Turning it up is not going to get you warmer any quicker.
Right.
Leave it at 72 or 74 or whatever your comfort zone is, and it'll start blowing air once it's warm.
Once it gets to that, right. So it's actually better to keep it at a reasonable temperature.
There are people that spend a lot of time designing these things and making sure the warm-up time is optimized with you setting that at basically 74 or 72 or
right.
And two things we haven't covered are heated steering wheel.
Oh, yeah. Heated seats and heated steering. Certainly in our region, they're super popular.
Our tip is if you have it, use it.
Yeah, use it. They're
never
pretty wonderful right about now. A couple other things we talked about. Wipers and not running them while they're still stuck to your window. You can actually damage them, rip the rubber right off if they're frozen.
I mean, everyone's heard that noise, right? You have the wipers and they go.
Yes.
Or they're frozen in one
stuck.
place.
You could burn out the motor, but it's going. I mean, you're just destroying the rubber of your windshield wipers, and when you actually need them, they're not gonna work. Yeah, go out and scrape them. You take your nail on it and just take all that ice off.
Right, and it'll wiggle it off, and
Yep.
it will. The other thing is tire pressures. We see it a lot when we start to get cold weather, in New England. But a lot of people, for what people don't realize is that tire pressure is relative to outside ambient temperature. So for every 10 degrees, the temperature drops. It drops 1 pound per square inch PSI in tire pressure. So a lot of people come out on these cold mornings and all their tire pressure lights are on.
And nice to see that
if they have tire
those
pressure monitoring.
the two cars I've driven recently, the Kia Niro and the BMW X3, both have the tire pressure monitors, and they're very specific about what the tire pressure is
Not
in
all
each
do that.
tire.
Right.
And I find that incredibly convenient. But no fault against the car or the tires, but both of them were low on tire pressure.
But if you do the math, right? So I mean, if you haven't checked the tire pressure
from 60 degrees,
from 60, right, and it's 0, and say 30 is the nominal pressure, that's what you're supposed to set it at, it's at 24.
Right.
I mean, that is low. That's going to affect your handling. That's going to affect emergency handling. That's going to affect the
fuel economy.
Fuel economy and braking, a lot of different things,
Yeah. So we say, and again, a lot of people are experiencing the cold that are in areas that don't normally, but for people that generally have to bump them up a few PSI for the winter to accommodate.
And if your car doesn't have the electronic monitors telling you that you're low,
do that
go
anyway.
out and check them.
Right. Yeah. Do that anyway. The other tip we talked about is being prepared. I envision the people, and I'm probably guilty of it myself, is you go in your slippers and your sweats and a sweatshirt, and you're going out to Dunkin' for a coffee. Think about what you're doing there.
My kid missed the bus.
Right, exactly. So even if you just have the things in your car, some additional clothing. We just did some piece on a great gift was emergency kits that have, some jumper cables and a blanket and
ice scraper.
Things like,
ice scraper. How many people are scraping their with a credit card?
Right. Yeah.
We've all been there.
Right.
It's a credit freeze. It's.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's like I'm yelling at my kids.
Just ignore them. I like that.
I miss that.
The credit freeze.
Yeah, God, it's bad. It's bad.
A flashlight, toe straps. Maybe extra food.
Right. Right.
Just
Depending on how far you're traveling. I mean, if you're
and check the fuel gauge.
Yeah.
You don't want to be driving around with under a quarter tank.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked about safety. One of the interesting things was news this week that we talked about. So if you want to share.
Oh, well, I mean, one of the news pieces that came out, we talked about there was in commercial airlines.
Right.
Out of the entire world in 2017, the amount of people who died in commercial airlines was 0. Right. And okay, that's pretty amazing. But actually, if you look at the United States, the year before was 0.
Right.
And the year before was 0. And why that's kind of, why we're talking about this in a car show is because if you're going to take a trip and if you need to go, I mean, we're in Connecticut, going to Washington, D.C. or go to Detroit or something like that. You can drive, but you could fly, and you're going to be a whole lot safer flying statistically. I mean, the point is that, there's a lot of people who are scared to fly.
Right.
And Well, the last 9 years, not a single person has died. Whereas last year, 37,000 people, around 37,000 people died in car crashes. So if you're going to be taking that trip and, the roads could get bad, there could be a snowstorm, think twice. I was just looking at, we're going to D.C. in a few weeks.
We could drive.
We could drive.
Right.
And look, it's $150.
Yeah.
From, middle of Connecticut out to Harvard. And it's like,
And admittedly, you run the risk in this season of getting trapped somewhere in an airport.
Right.
But still better
than being trapped on a
safer
highway.
when you're talking pure safety of being trapped on a highway.
But it's
I looked at some of the pictures
zero.
of Atlanta last year. Remember, they were in complete gridlock for 24 hours.
But it's a kind of testament of human psychology. My father-in-law used to say, well, I didn't like to fly. So he said, well, I like to be in control. So as we talk more and more about autonomous driving cars that drive themselves, is that going to be a road, a big bump in the road for autonomous cars? Because people want to feel like they're in control, so they don't want the cars to do for them. I think
the answer is yes.
So
yes,
just like being in an airplane. I can't
so I think you got to weigh how far you're traveling. What's the weather conditions where you're going versus the flight travel. I agree. Sure. So news from the track here. We have a couple new vehicles, big vehicles, the Lincoln Navigator and the Ford Expedition Max. So why are these of interest, Mike?
Well, I was actually assigned to buy the Navigator for the test program. It's my 136th car that I've bought since 2001.
You're old.
I find the whole car buying experience really fascinating because every dealer is different.
Right.
And honestly, the vast majority of cars that I've bought for the test program, the deals have gone really smoothly, no issues. This particular buy of the Navigator was just fraught with problems from the beginning. The dealer
Every
said,
once in a while,
the dealer said, well, they had what we want. They had the car in stock. They said, with very aggressive pricing. I'm like, great. What's the price? And they said, we're very aggressive pricing. So they kept refusing to tell me the price of the truck. And my approach is usually, all right, there's the sticker price, there's your cost. There's a number in between there. Let's just go right to that number and we'll be done with it. And they kept dancing around it.
I think we've talked about our car buying is maybe very different than the people in the audience. We typically are getting a brand new car. A lot of times we know more than the dealer does. We want it very, very quickly. So we're willing to put up with but I think for the average buyer, maybe walking out of that dealership would have been good advice and trying somewhere else because we do see that. The experience can be vastly different from, say, one Ford dealer or Lincoln dealer to another Ford and Lincoln dealer. Right. The other tools are maybe a build and buy program. We have that build and buy program where you solicit via email and get the prices back from the dealers. And kind of avoid a lot of what you went through.
Yeah, hopefully that program will work. And as you said, Consumer Reports has their own build and buy where you go and configure the car, you put in your information. Dealers that kind of pass the sniff test of us are allowed to kind of bid on your business, and it can be an easier, more seamless experience. And again, the vast majority of the cars I've bought have gone really smoothly. There's a lot of hard-working, honest dealers out there, and I've had the pleasure of working with a whole bunch of them. But once in a while, it seems like we're back to the 1970s buying experience.
Yep. So with the Lincoln Navigator and the Ford Expedition, we will be testing them. Both literally just hit our lots yesterday. And these are interesting because they're kind of adopting some of the aluminum body from their F-150 cousin. So it'll be interesting to see.
Enormous.
They're still enormous.
They're a lot lighter now.
But they're a lot lighter, maybe more fuel efficient. Obviously, we'll have first drives and videos coming, so stay tuned on those. We also have some questions from our viewers. So I'm going to take the first written one. So from episode 129, this person says, if you live in an area that has just a bit of snow each year and you don't want to go through the hassle of buying a completely separate set of tires, then get something called all-weather tires. They suggest the Nokian WRG3. They're halfway between all-season and winter tires, and they actually perform pretty good, better than half the pure winter tires. So let's start to answer that question with a little Tires 101.
Was that a question or was that an advertisement from Nokian?
That was an advertisement for Nokian. But it is a new segment. So it may be of interest to people. So we have all-season tires, which are kind of what they say. And all tires have compromises. Those are meant to give a modicum of performance in all weather conditions.
You should use modicum
I like that.
in
It makes me
engineering
sound very smart. Then you have your dedicated winter tire, designed truly to give you absolute traction in snow and ice. They actually have rubber compounds that are more flexible in cold temperatures. They even work, even if there is no snow and ice, a little better. Then a few years ago, we saw the introduction of models like the Nokian WRG3, the Toyo Celsius. We have tested both of those, but it's just like this person says. They are halfway between dedicated winter models and all season. Agreed. They do a good job, the two we've tested, and there's more coming, of snow and ice grip, but they compromise, just like a winter tire does, the dry, the wet grip. That's for most of the year, for most of us in this country. So yes, they do a good job if you don't want the hassle of changing to winter tires. But we would still say, if you're a person that has to be out in winter conditions, particularly snow and ice, I think of a nurse or a first responder of any sort,
Right.
We still say the winter tire, the dedicated winter tire, is the best traction for that condition. Take them off in the spring and get back to the all-season dry and wet grip.
Now, is there any place that still allows studded tires?
They still allow them. Most are very limited in terms of the season because they do damage the pavement. And where we see studs working is on hard packed snow. You think of those very northern areas where the road is really never clear.
Right.
They're plowing packed snow and ice. That's where studs really have an advantage.
But the issue with these types of tires is that those 8 months out of the year where it's dry and warm, you're getting an inferior tire.
Right.
You're compromising
Right.
your dry grip, you're compromising ultimate handling and all those different things.
Right.
So, I mean, it's definitely a trade-off.
It is a trade-off.
And just like when people talk about, they insist they need all-wheel drive.
Right.
That's the same kind of response that I give them, unless you're an emergency room nurse
Right.
or you're I don't know, dedicated radio guy. I don't know, but you don't have to be out in the crazy weather. You don't really need it. I mean, Mr. Jake Fisher has a crazy steep driveway and no permanent all-wheel drive cars in your house.
Well, my wife has snow tires.
There you go.
Right. Winter tire. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's great. So the second question, we're going to kind of do a little bit different. We've asked you to send in video clips, your own experiences, your own questions. So we have one today from Dragon. His name is Dragon, that highlights a concern of his, but it also relates to some concerns of ours. So let's take a listen.
Hey guys, my name is Dragon. What's happened to me, I was driving on highway, maybe at 70 miles an hour on the cruise control. And I had to turn around and reach something from my back seat. So I was unable to reach. So I had to unbuckle my seat belt. And then when I turned around, I just realized I was driving 70 miles an hour with cruise control on. And I was not paying attention on the road. I was thinking, why does cruise control doesn't disengage if you unbuckle your seatbelt?
Okay, so Dragon has some concerns about his seatbelt use and his cruise control. I just want to weigh in first and say, Dragon, and anybody, we'd prefer you not unbuckle while you're driving, and particularly if you're going to reach back, whether you have your cruise control engaged or not. Probably best in this situation if you pulled over, and that's my safety hat. But it brings to light this balance of safety and convenience features, which we've talked about.
Well, look, I mean, first of all, I think obviously you shouldn't do something like that. Right. But I mean, props to him for admitting that he's doing this because he's not the only one. And a lot of people do this. They just wouldn't say this. But this is something that people do because when a car can do things for you, like hold the speed for you, whatnot, you physically don't need to be there as present. And I'm talking not should, but you could. And if you're on cruise control, you're going to continue on that road at 65 miles an hour, whatever it is. And what he's proposing is completely logical. That if you are taking your seatbelt off or something like that, it's like, whoa, hold on. Let's not keep on driving the car straight. Right. And we've talked a lot about this in terms of these semi-autonomous systems, the systems that control speed and your steering. And it's it's just too easy for people to not completely stay in control and look where they're going, and to get sidetracked on your phone or whatnot. But I think he's completely onto this, because the issue is that there are common sense, simple things. Now we're seeing there's going to be a future where we're going to see more cars like the Cadillac Super Cruise, where it monitors you, making sure you're paying attention. But this is a simple one,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they have sensors to know if your seatbelt's coming off. Why not say, okay, we're not going to let you to? We could go try it, but I mean, on these, I'm sure if you go into a car with semi-autonomous technology and take the seatbelt off, it's not necessarily stop, but it should.
No.
But it
I mean,
should.
it's watching your eyes. Why not make sure you're
Why
belted?
not?
And I think
Why
it comes
not?
from so many people do buckle automatically now that we, even us, make the assumption that people are riding around with their seatbelts on. It's so automatic for us. Yet there's a group of people that just don't. And I think he is onto something, that it would be just a simple check. You don't get to use all this convenience if you're not being safe while doing it.
Correct.
It was even a time when you couldn't get your car started unless your seat was buckled.
The interlock.
So
yeah, and that went away. So thanks to Dragon. We really appreciate it. If anybody else would like to submit their experiences, their questions, please submit them via video to consumerreports.org/talkingcars. We'd love to see them. And as always, thanks for watching. Stay warm.